I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight TV, we're joined by Nino Boezio. He is the author of a remarkable book. It is called Faith, Its Value and Power Within the Unseen Dimension, a comprehensive guide to biblical faith. This thought-provoking book embarks on a deep exploration of faith, not just as a belief system, but as a dynamic, life-changing force. Drawing on more than 20 years of research and inspired by Hebrews 11:6, the author offers readers a profound understanding of faith's role in God's creation, human potential, and the ultimate salvation of humanity. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank our team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Nino, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Yeah, thanks very much, Logan.
What led you to focus on Hebrews 11:6 as your foundation for your exploration of faith in your book?
Well, about 30 years ago, I was confronted with the question, what does a true Christian look like? I looked around and I wasn't necessarily satisfied with everything I saw around me. So I really tried to dive into that question. And it took quite a while until I did get to Hebrews 11:6, where it says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. I've seen that verse before, but I never really paid much attention to it until that particular time. That was probably around maybe 25 years ago or so. And I found some things were actually troubling initially. Like the word impossible to me was very strong. So I decided to really dive into this because I realized that if this is true, then faith is a fundamental principle that everyone has to live by, not just a Christian, but basically everyone. So I really dived into it deeply out of personal interest and a desire to understand when it can apply. Now, in the past several years, I did have a lot of time on my hands to more or less assemble all my research on faith, to put it into a sort of procedures manual type of thing, something I could refer to myself personally. And that's what I did. And I actually shared it with a few people, and they said, this is pretty good. You should actually circulate it to a wider audience because it could help a lot of people. And one person really urged me a lot to get it published. And that's more or less where I ultimately took that route because I realized many people are going through a lot of difficulties, wrestling with a lot of challenges, and therefore the application of faith can make a big difference in their lives.
So the bottom line is, just like Hebrews 11:6, you believe that faith is essential if we're going to have a life with Christ and with God, and have.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. It's one of the things I found, which was interesting, and a number of people who already looked at my book commented on, is my reference to the parent-child relationship. And the publisher actually noted that as well. If we consider our human parents, assuming we had, good parents, they operate very much like God does with human beings. If God created human beings and he's the one who set up the family structure, and we start to see God as a father, Christ said he came to reveal the Father. When we start to see God in a parental way, we actually understand faith in a much more profound way of seeing things. We don't really think of it this way, but when we have parents, they do things for us that maybe we don't deserve. They look after us, they give us security, they care for us, they want us to grow. They want us to live by certain standards, but they also say no for various things as well. So when we see God in a parental type of fashion, it actually helps people more fully understand how God works with human beings. And as a result, this faith element, like I said, it kind of operates within the human family as well, where you have faith in your parents to a certain degree. So it makes the understanding of faith much more powerful and much more stronger.
I think that's a great analogy, a great way to look at it when you look at the relationship being similar to that you have with your parent. Now, you've got a diverse academic and professional background. Tell us how that influenced your approach to studying and writing about faith.
Well, my professional background, about about 30 years ago, I also became a volunteer publisher for a financial publication produced by the Society of Actuaries.
Mhm.
So I've been one of the chief editors for that publication, and it got me quite involved in writing about all sorts of things. And it certainly gave me a lot of experience in writing, and then also public speaking, and also trying to understand the world at large. And since I've been operating in the financial environment, there's a lot of psychology that permeates everywhere. And one of the things that's sometimes we look at things in terms of numbers and, economic growth and all that, but whenever we're dealing with an economy or any type of situation, people are losing their jobs, people are getting worried, people are getting trouble. A few years ago, one of the things that prompted me to work on this book even more quickly was I saw farmers, for example, in Montana, and I think in Texas as well, who had to liquidate their herds because they
Mm.
didn't have grass to feed them and so on. And I began to realize, like, a number of them were talking about God and so on, and I kind of felt that maybe they needed more understanding. And
Mm.
that's where my book can actually help many of these people. The matter of faith, I don't think is very well understood, and
Mhm.
myself included, until I put a lot of work into this. But there's a lot of questions that come up with faith, like what is the will of God? When will he step in? When will he not do so? Can we trust his promises? And one of the things I found rather interesting is we often talk about Christ in terms of dying for our sins,
Mhm.
but he talked a lot about miracles and moving mountains and that kind of thing. And that's not really often addressed by many people. They don't
Mhm.
understand that. So I also went into the book in that area, trying to more or less fill in the blanks, help people understand how that works as well. And I actually give some personal examples, even in my own life. There was one graphic example where I lost my I lost my job during the 9/11 attacks.
Mm.
I was in the financial industry, and I was actually unemployed for about 2 years as a result of that. But then I took God up on one of his promises, and I ended up getting 4 job opportunities in 48 hours.
Wow.
Things like that. And that was very profound. I never sent them a resume or anything like that. And, and I mentioned that in the book. I got into more detail, but there were just things like that, not only in my own life, but others, where there's some dramatic responses when you believe God, uh, look for him for help, and really take your relationship with God seriously.
What do you believe is key to transforming faith from a concept into a tangible force in a person's life?
Well, first of all, we need to see God as real. That's one thing that's very difficult. We need to have a spiritual mindset, which is also difficult. And one of the things that people do appreciate, ironically, is how the 12 disciples were pretty bad in their
Mm.
application of faith. They would believe, and then maybe half an hour later they were already doubting and skeptical and so
Mhm.
on. So seeing God as real is extremely important. And additionally, I find, like, let's say in my own career background and so on, uh, I find that it's great to have a career and work hard and have successes, but sometimes we do need to keep things in a proper perspective. And that's where God comes in. Sometimes we get so distracted and sometimes we get misled by various ideas and events that we kind of lose touch with what we're trying to do and the purpose of our life on this earth and what God plans for all human beings.
How do you envision readers using your book, either on their own personal journeys or in community settings?
Well, I provide tools, for example, as to how to maybe arrive, well, how to arrive at more of a attitude of spirit and in truth. That's another verse Jesus said. You should worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And that more or less helps to cut through some of the false ideas out there. It could be superstitions, they could be rituals, there could be various practices which are maybe inconsistent with what the Bible more or less teaches. So if we can get to more of a deeper understanding of what God wants for us, what he expects, our relationship for God will be much stronger. So I give some guidelines in there as to what people should, look for and developing a stronger spiritual mindset. And I have 30 chapters in this book. And the reason why there's 30 is because there's so many angles to faith. I had to address a number of them. For example, what is the will of God? Can the impossible happen? How much do we need? How much can we or should we rely on ourselves? Is there an obedience angle? So there's a number of elements that we need to consider that I've addressed in each chapter of the book. And this becomes very important because it sort of forms a bit of well, I wouldn't call it a checklist per se, but I find that I'm also referring to my own book because there are sometimes multiple issues operating at the same time, but not the same issues. So someone might not have a problem with something, but a problem with something else. So I more or less, like I mentioned earlier about it being sort of like a procedures manual, I kind of made it more of a book format, but still there's a nice set of chapters addressing various attributes, various issues you have to think about, which I think will really help a lot of people take their relationships with God much higher.
Absolutely. I fully agree. Nino Boezio has written a powerful book. It is called Faith, Its Value and Power Within the Unseen Dimension, a comprehensive guide to biblical faith. Nino, I will give you the final word today. Anything else you'd like the folks at home to know?
Well, when I wrote this book, one of my intentions was to make it a book that people can read and reread multiple times, more or less go back to it, look at things, reassess things, think about things further. So it's not a book that you would just read once and then put on the bookshelf. I planned on it being a good document for people to use on multiple occasions, and maybe I would even say persistently. I also get into quite a bit about God's plan for human beings throughout eternity. So this matter of faith is not just something that applies to our current lifetime. It has implications for eternity, more or less. So there are very important issues I bring up in the book in relation to that. And by doing so, I hope that people get a much bigger, much better perspective on life. I make a very good point in the book about what God wants with us is character development, godly character development. The fact that Genesis 1:26 says that God created us after the God kind implies that we do need to develop godlike character. So those are some of the points I want to more or less conclude with referring to my book.
Absolutely. I think this is a book, like you said, that you'll want to keep by your Bible, that you'll want to refer to from time to time, that you'll want to read and reread. And in some cases, it'll serve as a daily devotional to keep you focused on what is important in life and help you come to terms with some of the universal questions that we have about God and Jesus, such as why do bad things happen to good people and so forth. I think a lot of eternal questions are pondered and thought about and given great thought in this book. Nino, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much, Logan.
My pleasure. I appreciate your time. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.